We have that. Brilliant. Okay, so yeah, welcome everybody to the launch of our Energy Master Plan. The agenda for this evening is as follows. A hello from me, the chair of Connecting-Cabra, and then Fergal Purcell from Arden Energy is going to go through our Energy Master Plan. Ger Doherty from Codema is going to discuss some of the grants available. Justin Ward and Owen, both from Connecting-Cabra, are going to talk about potential projects and a kind of personal or community experience. And then we're going to have a Q&A at the end and some closing remarks. I suppose I just wanted to start by saying that Connecting-Cabra is a relatively new group. We only set up in 2021. It feels like much longer because lots has happened and we've done lots. But one of the first steps we took in our journey of 1,000 miles, I suppose, is setting up the group. And when we registered as a sustainable energy community, I suppose I certainly didn't think that we'd end up doing lots of the things that we've done. And the main task that we set to at the beginning of, coming together was to complete an energy master plan for Cabra and to find out our baselines and where we could save energy. So it's just one step in the kind of journey towards climate neutrality or kind of a more climate resilient community. When we set up, we put together kind of a vision for Cabra around warmer homes, cleaner energy, green enterprise, so that people could earn a good living, sustainable transport, including active transport, biodiversity and food security were all kind of things that umbrellas that we wanted to sit under. We established as a sustainable energy community in 2001, as I said, but we recognize that, a response to the climate and biodiversity crises is, not just about energy. It takes in all sorts of other areas. And we're looking at energy efficiency, renewable energy, fuel costs, active transport, biodiversity and green spaces, food security, circular economy, lots of other bits and pieces there. You can see it there on the slide, but we've been keeping busy over the last 2 years. Just not on the energy side of things, this is some of the things that we've been doing as a group. We hired an ecologist thanks to the Community Foundation of Ireland, and completed a biodiversity action plan for Cabra, and had lots of crack along the way, organising kind of community outreach events where we had a bat walk and learned about people's experiences around biodiversity in the area. We've given away trees, given away bulbs, planted them around the place, and organised things for Cycling Day. And there's even been a kind of little sub project from Connecting-Cabra that grew from Connecting-Cabra called Community Roots, formerly known as Space to Grow. So lots and lots of little bits and pieces, but that's not what we're here about tonight, I suppose. Tonight is all about energy and the launch of our Energy Master Plan. We have done some events to do with energy, including a very successful retrofitting webinar last year, which highlighted the experiences of local people who took retrofitting measures in their own homes. And that was really, I really enjoyed it, because it wasn't somebody from SEIA talking about the measures you can take. It was John down the road who got solar panels, or Mary around the corner who got insulation, and their kind of lived experience of those measures. We also had an energy event in Christ the King in October last year, which had different vendors to talk about kind of solar panels and active transport, and there was community groups that were invited as well, and that was really nice. It was meant to be kind of an information event to break down some of the, I suppose, information barriers that exist around this topic. It can be quite word heavy and confusing, and hopefully, the Energy Master Plan that has been laid out for Cabra will be accessible to everybody who reads it. Okay, and to quote one of my favorite songs, Cotton Eye Joe, where do we come from, where do we go? To know where we need to go, we need to know where we come from, and we need to know what our baseline for energy usage is in Cabra, to know how we can reduce it, and the measures that we can take that not only will reduce our carbon emissions, but also create, you know, a cheaper place to live, a warmer place to live, a more comfortable place to live. So with that, I'd like to move on to the Energy Master Plan itself. So thank you all for being here and for listening, and thanks to everybody who's been involved in this process so far. And I'd hand over to Fergal. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Katrina. Thanks for that lovely introduction. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk about the Energy Master Plan. So we were commissioned by Connecting-Cabra Sustainable Energy Community to develop the Energy Master Plan, and it was through the SEAI funded program to help SECs to develop energy master plans. Okay, next slide. Yeah, cool. So just an overview of Cabra. So there's 17,000 plus people, just over 7,000 dwellings, less than 1 car per dwelling. So that's kind of lower than the national average. I'm not sure exactly what the national average is. It's kind of like 1.5 or something. So I guess that's in a kind of a slightly, you know, urban environment with good public transport links. It's uses quite a lot of energy, whole SEC, so that's 21 million euros. So there's a large energy spend. I mean, that's at current prices, but I guess current prices are going to persist for a while. So there's a kind of a big prize in terms of cost savings, and then also in terms of CO2 savings with 35,000 tons of energy-related CO2. Okay, next slide. So the first thing we do really is just to quantify in a bit of detail, like what uses energy or where the energy is going, and come up with that sort of, you know, high-level figures of 21 million euros and 35,000 tons. So it's all based really on statistics, which are from the CSO, from the census, then from SEAI primarily in the BER database, and then in heat maps as well. So those are the primary kind of sources. So we kind of look at the area and the types of houses there, what the kind of average BER is, and then look at the heat map, see what the kind of heat demand is in the heat maps, and come up with a kind of a characterization. So it's primarily residential in terms of energy. You know, I've got 92 million kilowatt hours out of 152 million is residential. But there is a kind of a commercial and tertiary. So that total commercial includes public sector as well. So that's like a reasonable kind of tertiary demand, and then obviously transport energy as well, mainly in private cars. And as I said, the kind of private car ownership is slightly lower than the national average. So I guess the headline is, you know, it's primarily residential. So that's where the kind of big prize is in terms of potential energy savings. But albeit that there's still significant energy use in commercial and transport. Okay, next slide. So just looking at the residential in a bit more detail. So the housing stock you can see there in the graph over to the left. So it's, you know, predominantly 1919 to 1960. So that was a time when not a lot of insulation would have been put in. So the average BER in the area is E1. So it's not so great. It's an average BER of 320 kilowatt hours per meter squared per year. And I think the national average is maybe about 260 or something like that. So it's a good bit higher than the national average. There's certain little bit of variation in house types, and we'll come to that a little bit later. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's probably pockets of newer housing where the BERs and average BER is better, and then older housing, it's worse. Pretty much, I mean, that tends to be the main determinant of BER, to be honest, is the age of the housing stock. Okay, next slide. We did a survey, and the SEC guys were brilliant to kind of getting the word out there and getting responses to the survey. So the main kind of take home from the survey really is that people are interested in potentially improving the energy efficiency of their house. They might have taken some action so far in terms of LED lights or lagging jackets or attic insulation, but are interested in kind of going deeper, I suppose, and doing more. Okay, next slide. So what we did is said, look at, okay, we need to do energy audits or assessments of particular houses and particular house types, I think, so there's obviously kind of waves of construction in Cabra and houses of particular types. And it's really to get a kind of characterization of the house types and then to get a representative sample of dwellings to do kind of surveys on that, where a survey of one house would be representative of a larger number of identical or nearly identical houses. So next slide. So we kind of looked at these. So you kind of got 1920 semi-detached, and then there's 1920 terraces, and then there's some 1990 semi-detached houses, and then the houses built between the 46 and 60 semi-detached, and then there's some detached houses. So we kind of really looked at all the different types of houses and came up with a kind of a sample of 10 to do assessments on. Next slide. And out of those assessments, I mean, you could probably have done this list without really having done the assessments, but the main recommendations coming out of the assessments are obviously, I mean, almost every single lamp should be an LED at this stage, really. And probably every single house should have attic insulation. And heating controls are, pretty kind of cost effective. So those kind of measures are not terribly expensive, but pretty effective. And then you're getting into slightly more expensive things like wall insulation, whether that's external or internal, and then possibly heat pump, solar PV, or window replacements, which are kind of slightly more expensive, higher investment type things. Next slide. So the results of the surveys, there's a kind of a range. I suppose that's fair enough. I mean, I guess we deliberately chose a variety of house types. So we got a variety of existing BERs, anywhere from E2 up to B1. And I suppose that B1's a little bit of an outlier and maybe shouldn't have been in there really, because it's already been improved, I suppose. But still, I mean, this is probably scope to improve it up to an A2 or something like that. But all the others really, I think anywhere, certainly C3 and worse, could certainly benefit from energy retrofit and would be eligible for kind of grant funding through various SEI programs to do it. Next slide.
Sorry, Fergal, 2 minutes.
Okay, next slide then, quickly. Sorry, guys. So we kind of broke up the kind of the retrofit measures into packages, really: basic, intermediate, advanced, or deep. So really, like, basic is the energy lights, roof insulation, possibly heating controls, and then you're getting into the kind of deeper measures like full retrofits, deep retrofits with loads of insulation and floor insulation and heat pumps, and each dwelling type got a kind of report with a package of measures like that. Okay, next slide. And then this is kind of like the percentage improvement. So in some cases, like with solar PV, like in number 5 and number 6 there, you get like 100% improvement. So the house basically goes zero energy, zero carbon, because it's got solar PV and it's super efficient. But it's with the kind of deep retrofit, you can easily get sort of between 60 and 80% improvement in energy efficiency. Next slide. And okay, so that's the domestic bit, 60–80%, and then the public / commercial audits. So that's like targeting the maybe like 20% of energy that's used in the public commercial sector. and we did audits of the school and the GAA club, 2 schools in the GAA club. And really, that's looking at, again, the kind of hierarchy of measures from like energy management, energy awareness, just switching things off, looking at what's using energy when, to LED retrofits, and then heating controls, kind of similar to domestic, pretty cost effective, and then solar PV is suitable for lots of places and is kind of reasonable payback, albeit slightly longer. So those are the main recommendations in the commercial public sector. In the residential sector then, so again, it's got a pretty poor average BER, got a pretty large energy spend, and there's a big potential to save energy and to improve energy efficiency in the residential sector particularly. And then that's kind of more on the tertiary, yeah. So I mean, again, slightly kind of lower usage, like about 20%, lower spend, but still really good kind of examples of projects can be done with solar PV, with LED lights, heating controls and stuff, and can really bring that down. And there's grants available, probably about 30% or maybe up to 50%, depending on the organization. So it's kind of attractive, it helps the payback. And then the next slide. And then in the transport sector, so I mean, there's, you know, it's kind of lower than average car ownership, but still there's a lot of kind of private cars. So I mean, the number one thing in transport is modal shift. It's, you know, switch from the car to bike, walk, public transport. And Cabra's kind of pretty well placed for that. I mean, it's got decent public transport links. And then, of course, I guess you still need a car for certain things, and then it's a kind of switch to EVs. So those are the main initiatives that can be taken in the transport sector. Right, that's me done. Sorry for rushing through it.
Thank you,
yeah,
for
okay.
And now Ger Doherty is going to speak about some of the grants.
Hi everybody, I'm going to talk about all of the grants that SCAI, all of the relevant grants that SCAI offer, which may be of use to the community and to houses and also to businesses. So I'm going to start on the home energy upgrade grants. And I'll so there's 3 different types of home energy upgrade grants that are available to home owners. First of all, there's free energy upgrades. So if you are in fuel poverty, and I'll talk about how that's defined, you can qualify for free home energy upgrades, which are substantial home energy upgrades, as I said, for free. The downside at the moment is that there's a backlog on this scheme of 2 years, unfortunately, although they're working to drive that down, but there is a backlog there, but it is an attractive scheme. I'm also going to talk to you about individual energy upgrade grants. So these are the type of grants that have been there for the last 15 years, where you go and get 1 measure or 2 measures done, you get your contractor, you pay for the job, and then you claim the grant back from SCAI. And then finally, there's the one-stop shop, which was only introduced around this time last year. And in this case, the idea of the one-stop shop is that you go to these one-stop shops and they handle everything. So you don't have to be going to various contractors, various grants, you know, etc. The one-stop shop handles everything from getting the grant, from doing the home energy assessment, from managing the project, from getting the BER, and you pay them net of the grant. So talking about the free energy upgrades first. So if this is how you qualify, well, there's 7 different ways that you can qualify. You see them listed there, but it's all about fuel poverty. And the other thing that the other box that you must tick is that you must own and live in your own home, and it must have been built and occupied before 2006. So, you know, houses after 2006 are maybe reasonably energy efficient, but houses before 2006 are generally poorly insulated, etc. Next one, thanks, Deirdre. So the available energy grant upgrades are 100% towards the attic insulation, cavity wall insulation, external wall insulation, internal wall insulation. There's also support, well, 100% support for lagging jackets, draft proofing, and energy efficient lighting. And in some cases, depending on the condition of the existing heating and windows, they may also pay for heating upgrades or window replacements. And it's delivered through a panel of private contractors and community-based organizations who are appointed by SCAI. move on, please, Deirdre, thanks. So now we're talking about the individual home energy upgrade grants. And this is the traditional model which has been in place for the last 15 years. And you look at the individual grants, you may decide I'm going to do external insulation and I'm going to get my attic insulated, for example. So what you do is you go and look for your contractor, you look at the registered contractors on the website, you select maybe a few that are near you, you get prices from them, and then you get the best price and you apply for the funding. Then you manage the project yourself to completion to make sure it happens right. And you then pay the contractor and you claim the grant back. Next one, please. So the grants that are available are similar in most cases for the one-stop shop and the individual energy grants. So several of the grants are similar, but there are extra grants in the one-stop shop. So there are heating grants for heat pumps from air to water. In other words, that's taking heat from the outside air and putting into a water-based system in your home, you know, typically having radiators. There's air to air where you're taking from the outside air and you're blowing it into the various rooms. So you can see the grants that are available there for heat pumps. There's also grants for heating controls, which could apply to your heat pump, but also could apply to your existing boiler-based system. And then finally, before you get a heat pump installed on your house, you have to make sure that your house is suitable for a heat pump. Because if you have a poorly insulated house, a heat pump will cost a fortune to run. So there's a grant of 350 towards that. Next one, Deirdre, thanks. Then there's also grants for insulation. So you can see the amounts here, but ceiling insulation is where you're putting, you know, in this middle photograph here, you see a guy rolling insulation across the ceiling. You could also get rafter insulation if you have your attic converted. So that's where they put the insulation up along the rafters, which are those beams running at 45 degrees to the vertical there, or to the horizontal there. Then cavity wall insulation is where it's the top picture here, they pump beads of insulation into the cavity between your outside brick and your inside block. There may already be insulation in there. If there is, they just fill the gap. External wall insulation is what you see there in the bottom photograph, and then internal dry lining insulation where it's applied to the inside walls if there's a reason why they can't apply it to the outside walls. Next one, thanks, Deirdre. There's also grants towards solar hot water panels, which is what you see in the top photograph here. They're not very popular anymore because most people use the roof to put up solar PV, and then the solar PV can also heat your hot water. So solar PV is quite attractive at the moment, particularly since they've taken the VAT of the solar PV installations, makes it more attractive. Next one, thanks. So basically, as I've mentioned, you find your contractor on the website to ensure that they're registered. You contact the contractor, you get prices maybe off 2 or 3 contractors, and then you select that contractor, apply for the grant. Usually the grant comes back within a couple of days, and then you get your work done, and then you pay the contractor and you claim back the grant. Next one. So now we're going to talk about the one-stop shop option. So the idea here is that they complete the home energy solution. They will do the home energy assessment to recommend the measures of what you should get done. They'll do the grant application for you. They'll project manage it. They'll organize the contractors. In some cases, they'll also provide finance if you need loans. Some of them have deals with Plus, and some of them have deals with the credit unions. They organize follow-up BER, and then you pay them net of the grant. They get the grant from SCAI and you pay them net of that grant. So there's advantages to that, obviously. Next one. So the thing about this is that you have to do a fairly significant job on your house if you're going to get this. You have to bring it up to at least a B2, and you must improve your BER by at least 100 kilowatt hours per square meter per year. So if you're starting off with just say a C1, you're going to have to bring that up probably to an A3. So it isn't just a case of let's do one simple measure or 2 simple measures. You have to do a range of measures, and it needs to be built and occupied before 2011 for insulation and heating controls, and before 2021 for renewable systems grants. Next one, David. So the grants are basically the same for the heating system, so I won't go through all of them again. There's one caveat to that, which I'll go through in a couple of slides. Next one. And the insulation grants are again the same, but the caveat here is that you can also get floor insulation. So you can get insulation inserted under your floor if you have wooden floors, and there's 3.5 grand towards that. So there are other grants as well for windows and external doors. So this, if you are going the traditional route, they don't grant aid windows or external doors anymore. Whereas if you go for the one-stop shop, they do give substantial grants towards that. Solar hot water, solar PV, we've already discussed. They're also available under the one-stop shop. And then mechanical ventilation and air tightness, there's extra grants here for if you choose to use the one-stop shop method. So air tightness is, you know, sealing up all the holes and gaps in everything around the house. And then mechanical ventilation is where you have a control system where you control the amount of air that is pumped into your house and the amount of air that is pumped out. And basically you use the extract air to preheat the incoming air to your house, so you can save energy that way. And the home energy assessment I mentioned already. Sorry, just go back one to project management, there's a grant towards that. And also for heat pumps, if you install a heat pump under the one-stop shop, you get an extra grant of 2,000 on top of the, you know, already the 4,500 grant for a heat pump for a house. Thanks, Deirdre. Next one. So you see here a list of the things that the advantages of the one-stop shop is that are the grants that are available. It covers project management, it covers home energy assessment, it covers floor insulation, it covers windows, and it covers ventilation and air tightness as well. So that's the advantage of the one-stop shop service. Next. So I'm going to now briefly talk about community energy grants. So this is where the community gets together and decides to do you know, a range of things within their community. So that could involve domestic upgrades whereby the grants are similar to what's available under one-stop shop. They could involve community or not-for-profit premises, as Fergal was mentioning earlier. You can get up to 50% capital funding towards community buildings. So if you have a community centre, a GAA club, something like that, they can get up to 50% capital funding. Public sector or commercial premises can get up to 30% funding. You get a grant towards project management. And the way these community energy grant schemes work is that there's a number of project coordinators based around the country, and they collect up projects. So they might say, we're going to do 20 houses in Cabra. We're also going to do a community centre in Cabra. We're going to do an office block in Monaghan, and we're going to do a GAA club in Connemara. And they collect up those projects, go to SCAI and say, we've got these projects, all right, will you grant fund them? And SCAI, as long as they've done it right, will then provide the grant funding to do this. Next one, Deirdre. So the last type of grants I'm going to talk about is business grants. So there's a range of business grants. First of all, for SMEs, there is this scheme called the Support Scheme for Energy Audits. So SCAI will provide €2,000 towards an energy audit for SMEs if you're spending more than 10 grand on your energy bills. Now the energy audit might cost you a little bit more. Sometimes, depending on the size of the business, they might charge 3 grand or 2.5, or in some cases, they just do it for the 2,000 grand. There's also this support scheme for renewable heat. So this is a grant scheme to promote biofuel boilers and heat pumps. So if you're installing a heat pump, they'll provide 30 to 40% towards the installation cost. So that's the installation cost of the heat pump plus any upgrades you might have to do to the building to make it possible to install the heat pump. In other words, if you have to upgrade insulation, etc. And then on the biofuel boilers, you can get an ongoing tariff paid to you on an annual basis, or maybe I'm not sure if it's annual or quarterly. But, you know, as you use biofuel, they will pay you a grant towards the amount that you use. And now there are limits on the amount that they'll pay you to avoid that. You know, there was a scheme in Northern Ireland, which they call the cash for ash scheme. So this is kind of maybe a more sensible scheme where you don't get paid to waste energy. You only get paid for useful heat. And then you've got the Exceed program. So this is a program really for large projects only, where you're spending, you know, several $100,000 on something to do an upgrade on a building or an upgrade on a process. And you can get 50 to 70%, depending on the size of your business, towards the technical assistance for the design of the technical energy upgrades. So 50% if you're a large business, 70% if you're SME, but it's only for large projects, as I've mentioned. And then 30 to 50% towards the capital investment, depending on the size of your business. Again, 30% if you're a large business, 50% if you're SME, and 40% if you're a medium-sized business. And then the only other one that I want to mention is the energy efficiency obligation scheme. So again, if you have a significant energy efficiency investment and you're generating a lot of savings, in effect, you can sell those savings to the energy suppliers. So for instance, I had an Exceed project last year where they were spending about 600 grand. So they got about 180 grand from the Exceed project, but they also got from the energy supplier, they also got, I can't remember how much it was, but it was around 30,000 euro, which was quite substantial. So that is a possibility. But again, the energy suppliers are only interested in large projects here as well. I think that's me done.
Great, thanks a million.
Thanks, Ger. And if people have any questions for any of the panelists, please stick them in the chat or in the Q&A box. And yeah, we'll answer the questions at the end, or they can be answered live in the Q&A box. Next up, we have Owen Condren, who is a member of Connecting-Cabra and is just going to give us a quick overview of his personal experience of some retrofitting measures in his house in Cabra. Thank you, Owen.
Hello. Hi. Sorry, you caught me off guard. I thought Justin was next. But hello, everyone. Yeah, as Katrina said, I'm a resident in Cabra and also a fledgling member of the group. They thought it'd be an idea for somebody in the community to go through a personal experience, so I volunteered. So I'll just talk about the last couple of years since we moved to Cabra Drive and what we've done and what we still have to do, and give a bit of detail on that. So I just have one slide, easy for you, Deirdre. So yeah, we bought the house in 2019 and we did extensive renovation before moving in. So typically, yeah, that came with wall insulation, floor insulation. We also put in underfloor heating and heating controls, and a new heating system, gas boiler system. We also put an extension on, which had, you know, high levels of insulation as it was a new build, and also good solar gain, which is important for the back of the house. And then we added windows about a year after moving in. So that was kind of the first phase. And then in 2022, last year, I heard about the one-stop shop, and it was really only then that I started becoming conscious of heat pumps and really trying to push towards getting the house to close to carbon neutral or negative. So I started pursuing the one-stop shop scheme, and I landed on House to Home. I found it hard to actually get through to the providers. I think there are only 6, and they were very busy at the time. I imagine they're still very busy. So yeah, last summer I got started with House to Home, and the first stage there was to get a technical assessment. So that's a full dwelling report, very detailed calculations of the heat loss of every room and the heat gain through solar gain, and yeah, all the square meterage and all these various things. And that included the BR, which was at B3. So that was our kind of starting point, was the B3 rating with the House to Home or the one-stop shop. And that was a third-party contractor, so I received that documentation myself, which was important for a reason I'll get to now. And yeah, the recommended works were essentially an air-to-water heat pump, which I was happy the house was compatible with, and PV panels, and the expected energy rating given these works would be A2. So yeah, that was that, and then we got started on the contract with House to Home, but I started to become suspicious about the prices I was quoted. I won't go into all of it, but you know, the headline item was 20k for a heat pump, and nobody from House to Home had actually been to the house, only the third party subcontractor who'd done the assessment. And when I pressed them on it, how could they quote me that when they didn't actually specify the capacity of the heat pump? They said they still needed to figure that out. So that's when alarm bells started to ring. So I started to look at how much it cost to buy a heat pump and Screwfix sell the heat pump that they were quoting for fractions of that price. So the short version is I cut ties with them just before thinking about signing, and landed on Celtic Renewables. So I decided to go not do the one-stop shop. I don't want to speak ill of the one-stop shop in general. I think it's suitable for many people because we had a lot of work already done. Single measure grants were more suitable to us. So as we just had those two headline items, and each comes with a significant single measure grant, that worked out a lot better. So I saved more than 50% against the net quote that I got from House to Home by going single measure with Celtic. It hasn't been all smooth sailing. It's been 6 months since I kind of signed a contract with them, and I think I paid a deposit in December. The heat pump went in March, which is visible here. I think it's just nice to have a picture. I didn't know what to expect. The cylinders inside the heat pump, I was able to sell the cylinder that we put in 3 years ago. So it's just about the size of a standard fridge freezer, really, and it's sitting there in the garage at the side of the house. And then there's an outdoor unit, which is quite small in the lower picture, that's just on top of our garage, directly above the heat pump in the picture above. So it's great. It heats the hot water and heats the house. Yeah, it just feeds it just plugs straight in to the same underfloor heating system, straight swap with the gas boiler, really, and also feeds the showers and the hot water and so on. And yeah, so I'm expecting solar panels in any moment now. I believe they've been delivered to Celtic, and yeah, expecting a date in the next few days. So excited for that. Yeah, and for us, I think PV obviously pays off a lot more the more you actually use it. You can sell it back to the grid, but maybe at about half the cost that you pay. So for us, it makes a lot of sense with the heat pump and also with an EV as well. So yeah, we have flat roof space, and if you squint at the lower picture, you can see some frames there where we're going to have PV on both the flat roof and then on the original pitched roof of the house. So that's really it. I hope it didn't go over time, and yeah, I'll pass over.
That was great, Owen. Thank you so much. And I'd highly recommend to anybody who's listening or watching to go back to Connecting-Cabra's YouTube channel. If you haven't watched our webinar from last year, it's a lot of kind of similar stuff to what Owen is speaking about, the different types of houses in Cabra, the measures that people took, the ones that were suitable for their own circumstances versus, another type of house. I know that my roof has particular needs. It needs a mesh put on before it needs before you can put solar panels on and that sort of stuff. And it's interesting, if you live in the area, to know what measures can be taken easily in your type of house. So thanks so much for that, Owen. Next up is Justin. And I just want to quickly say, because I have to hop off shortly, a huge thank you to Justin for his absolutely Trojan work. Some of the energy stuff can be a little technical and, dare I say, boring for me anyway. And Justin went through the EMP and all of its documents and information with a fine-tooth comb, and did it without complaining. And I would have found it very difficult. So thank you so much, Justin. We all really appreciate you and everything that you've done. So without further ado, Justin has a few projects to highlight and possible kind of next steps coming from the EMP. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Katrina, and thanks to everyone so far. Fergal, Ger, and Owen all spoke very well. Hopefully, I'll be able to match a little bit. And I suppose the theme of my presentation was really to try and build and give a community perspective, Connecting-Cabra's perspective, and try and build in what we've been trying to achieve on not just on energy, but on biodiversity, transport initiatives, safe cycling initiatives, all of the good stuff that's actually been taking place in Cabra over the past 2 years. I mean, it's been a roller coaster. The speed of the speed that we've been progressing is actually really, really, really impressive. So thanks to all the Connecting-Cabra sustainability members. Sorry, Deirdre, if you just don't want to go back there. And all who have worked so tirelessly in the spare time to make the Connecting-Cabra group work. You know, so I suppose, sorry, and you know, I'd also like to thank TU Dublin, our partner applicant, Arden Energy, Ger, and everybody that's actually helped to get the Energy Master Plan this far. I also want to thank actually all of those in the community who have actually supported the Energy Master Plan through its processes there. So we had 60 resident households who shared their energy use information and, you know, and completed questionnaires for us. 10 went on to avail of the, you know, the free bear audit, which was really good. And I must also thank Seamus and the team at Naomh Fionbar GA Club, the principals and secretaries at the two schools who Christ the King primary schools, who also got free energy audits. They kind of, you know, gathered all the bills together and actually facilitated the audits completed on site. So they were there to let people in and actually, to facilitate the actual audits themselves. So hopefully those commercial premises and public and sports premises, they're going to move ahead and actually, you know, they have a great advantage now. They're actually top of the queue because they've got their recent BER audits done. So it'd be really great if we could see those groups and those places, to progress on now and to actually, build on their advantage, because there's a lot of people in queues waiting for BER audits to be done even, at this point. Thanks, Deirdre. Can you just move on? Okay, so one of the key questions I suppose we kind of had was how does a community become zero carbon? So one of the interesting pieces about the sustainable energy community is that it breaks it down into small area maps, and so this is the question I think many of us had in 2020 during COVID period, when most of us were dying to get out into our local environment, and we suddenly kind of had a much greater appreciation for for going for walks and the solace and calm that it actually gave us. I think it inspired many of us, including myself, I think, to actually have a think about what's actually happening in the world regarding carbon emissions and the critical stage I think we're at this point in time. So I think the SAI, through this sustainable energy communities, whether they I suppose, thought that groups such as Connecting-Cabra would actually go ahead and create these groups, may not have been in their thoughts at the beginning. But I think Connecting-Cabra is a great example of actually what you can do in biodiversity, all of the elements brought together: transport and housing and commercial and community buildings. So, okay, so how does a community become carbon neutral? And the first step has been the energy master plan. The next stage is the do stage, and this will require multi-stakeholder buy-in. So that'll be local community, Dublin City Council, businesses, institutional, educational institutions, which is like TU Dublin has just entered. It's our new neighbour on our doorstep. It'd be really great if they could interact in our project to become carbon neutral. I think we've got Cozy Batter next to us. We've got Phibsborough next to us. They're all energy communities. There's a great momentum building in Dublin 7, and I think by interacting with all these, we can actually pull together great projects longer term as well. Thanks, Deirdre. So the next step, yeah. Okay, so this slide was just really to kind of to highlight where we are on the left. I just thought like some graphics might be useful. So the baseline is the graph, is the bar chart on the left. This is where we are, day number 1 here today. By 2030, this is where we kind of need to be getting down to minimum, which we're not really going to achieve. I think the next 2 years is kind of critical in terms of getting retrofit started and getting the skill sets for all these retrofit engineers and workers in place. So by 2030, we're obviously hoping to try and get to a serious reduction of maybe like 10-20% there, by 2030. Then ultimately down towards zero by 2050 on the right side of the graph. So these are the hopes, and I mean there's a long way to go. Deirdre, can you move on? Thank you. So this is actually just taken from Fergal's presentation earlier on, and I've just added some, let's say, statistics and percentages onto it, just to kind of highlight, like, I suppose, I think the areas that are so, predominantly heavy on CO2 emissions. Now, like, the commercial sector here is actually not that, it's not that, there are not that many buildings, commercial buildings in Cabra, but given that it actually makes up 20% of all total CO2 emissions, and 20% of the kilowatt hours per annum, you can also see then the residential, the huge potential the residential sector has within Cabra. It is predominantly residential, so you see kilowatt per hour, so you've got like 92.7, is a huge figure, and it's 60% of all energy usage. The CO2 emissions is also almost 60%, is all coming from our homes in Cabra, and they're predominantly gas, and a smaller amount of CO2 is being released from electrical sources now. So obviously then one of the more interesting points is the transport energy sector down here also uses 20% of all CO2 emissions in Cabra. And given our location and our proximity to the city centre, like 2.5 kilometres from the city centre, I think it's really worth exploring, pushing this area for alternative transport measures, whether that's through mobility hubs and lots of initiatives and behavioural changes within Cabra. Thanks, Deirdre. So yeah, so basically this is just kind of another highlight of it. So the residential side, 10 audits were completed as part of the EMP. The CCA, the Connecting-Cabra group, will continue to support and help residents to find the information they need to apply for grants, complete retrofits. There's scope for homes to group together. This is a big thing, I think, in Cabra, to group together similar house types and terraces. So if you could get a terrace of houses to actually complete, a retrofit, external insulation, wraps, PV installs, like in one go. Nearly all the companies that we've spoken to, even as part of the showcase back in October, they all said there are bulk efficiency gains, there's cost reductions if you can actually do that. So I think it's really well worth the while for residents in Cabra to actually to try and group together. Knock on your neighbour's door, find out who they are. Everybody has different incomes, everybody has different walks, needs. So I think it's really important that we kind of work as a community, which is why the Connecting-Cabra Sustainable Energy Group came about, is to try and facilitate these connections between ourselves first, to try and find out what our needs are, and then to kind of put in place plans which we've now done with the foundation work in the Energy Master Plan. Commercial businesses, we've got will encourage, so the Connecting-Cabra will encourage local industry, educational institutions and businesses to work with us and play their part on a journey towards carbon zero. First steps would be complete audits and energy saving projects. There's also scope to include small business retrofit energy saving projects in the Better Energy Community Grant applications the Connecting-Cabra may be involved in. Exceed grant, as Gerard mentioned earlier, and SEI have other specialised grants funding for larger companies. Given commercial business in sector in Cabra is not that large, but makes up 20% of all CO2 emissions, leaves scope to improve energy efficiency. So we've got some food companies in Cabra. We've got all of these different types of companies. We could create like a community anaerobic digestive systems, biogas systems. So there's lots of kind of various options there. And then finally, the community section, encourage community organizations, sports halls, clubs to complete their retrofit PV install, heat controls and heat pumps on their buildings. Like schools, there's 10 schools in Cabra. It's actually not on the slide here, I think. Up to about 10 schools in Cabra. They are going to get all of their roofs done, I hope, as been announced recently by the government. So I think it's really important that the state kind of leads by example, and actually gets those projects done, so people in the community can actually see it happening around them. That will encourage them, again, increasing the motivation and the momentum, and that has to come partly from the state as well. So you lead by example, I think. And thanks, Deirdre. Can you just next slide, Deirdre? Thanks. So then, okay, so we'll just have one or two final projects, just one back, I think.
One back, okay. Sorry, now just bear with me. I don't know if I can. Where are we, Justin?
Yeah, go back one more.
One more. Go back one more again.
Yeah. Long-term, okay, long-term decarbonization projects. This is kind of key, I think, to getting like all of the houses in Cabra are predominantly gas heated, you know, with gas boilers. So like the Codema have drawn up a Dublin district heating project. Geothermal in TU Dublin has been kind of tested. This is really kind of interesting. I think if you combine it with, let's say, PV solar boosters and you know, heat pumps as well, there is potential maybe to get a happy medium, and you know let's say to be able to heat large areas of Cabra with those sources as well. So you know, it's going to be a combination of measures that's going to get Cabra to carbon zero. So you know, hopefully, you know, Connecting-Cabra will work constructively with national bodies, TU Dublin, Dublin City Council, and other institutions to try and put in place long-term decarbonisation strategies. So that's a key kind of, you know, that is the final mile. That'll be the last 40-50% is actually getting gas and, you know, geothermal, or, you know, different ways of heating our homes. But the first steps are really, you know, retrofit installations. All of the basic stuff has to be done to get down to the 30% reduction by 2030. You know, that they're the immediate wins. Thanks, Deirdre. We'll just move one more.
Justin, just to bear in mind, we've 5 minutes left for the Q&A and everything. So just to bear that in mind, okay?
Okay, no problem. Just one more. Thank you. So yeah, so then like another possibility is basically Cabra Community Energy Cooperative. This may be possible if let's say legislation, politicians were able to actually amend legislation to allow the aggregation of rooftop PV panels to create community solar. So you know, something built on the on the structure of a credit union where shareholders and dividends are actually given to people, and you know, and it's managed like that. At the moment, it doesn't work for Cabra because you would need a greenfield site to put in place these 1 to 5 megawatt, grids, or let's say systems. So at the moment it isn't there, but I think it's something politicians could actually look at to really ramp up PV installations and incentivize the community to actually go ahead and do it. Thanks, Deirdre. Just next slide, Deirdre. Thanks. And then transport, as we were just speaking about earlier, the group will continue to engage community business and DCC in the rollout of, we hope to do a lot of more mobility hubs, EV charging facilities, bike sharing, cargo bike rollout to reduce the 1 to 5 kilometer mile trips to shops, schools, and commute to work. Like, this is a real, like I think, opportunity. Even at the 17 shops in Cabra, the shops at Fasso Road, the shops at the Maple Centre, at Lidl and Tesco, and all of those places in Cabra, there is an opportunity to put in place 1 or 2 cargo bikes at those places to actually give people an option to actually walk to the shop, do their shopping, and rent the cargo bike and bring their shopping home. You know what I mean? As an alternative to actually driving into these locations and car parks and that. And it will also help the quality of the air and congestion in these places, So at the moment, as we were saying, currently there's 5,434 cars in Cabra versus 7,038 households. That seems to be quite high. And given this, and I know it's less than the national average, but it is actually quite high given its location, that its proximity to the city centre is actually only 2.5 kilometres. So that means a lot of people do actually have cars, and I think there's scope to increase bicycle lanes and improve safety for cycling, for kids cycling to school as well, and that'll help. Thanks, Deirdre. And then, so residential retrofits, 10 audits have been done already. There have been 2,500 audits done in Cabra in total. I think there's actually, the average BER is E1, which leaves huge potential for improvements to B2. So you wouldn't have to do a hell of a lot of insulating, and actually and PV installs would actually get you a long way up the ladder there, as the lads have already spoken about. Thanks, Deirdre. And then transport again. So like 20% of all emissions in Cabra are coming from actually transport. So these are just, again, highlighting what we've actually just discussed there, which is like getting like grants, EV mobility hubs in place, giving people the alternative option, modal shift away from jumping in their car to go up to the shop or drop their kids to school, and that requires government to actually produce infrastructure, cycle lanes that are actually safe for kids and give parents peace of mind to actually allow their kids to get to school and into the workplace, and people getting there. So, I think we do need leadership from all sectors, from Dublin City Council, government, top down. It's not all about writing a policy paper. It's also about actually getting methods of doing these projects on the ground. So I think that's it, Deirdre.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I'll just move on to the next slide for the Q&A. Hopefully I'll be managed to get. Yeah, sorry, go back. I'm not sure if where we are with the Q&A. I might just stop share, will I, Brian?
Yeah, and I'll just go to now. Some of the questions have been answered already, but I'll just go through them very quickly, and then I might refer some of them. I think most of them are going to Ger Doherty, but so let me see. One, okay, will a recording be available? We'll send out the recording out to everyone who has been registered for this evening. So yes, that the video recording will be available. The census statistics that were utilized were based off the 2016 census or the 2022. My recollection is that it was 2016, that the 2022 weren't out by the time we started. Is that correct, Justin? Or
that is correct. I think Fergal can actually speak about it as well. Yeah, Fergal has actually the CSO info there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still haven't released the small area statistics for the 2022 census. So yeah, it's 2016.
2016.
It was just the headline figures that were released for 20 population stuff were actually released last year for 2022, which is really disappointing. It's one of the weaknesses, probably. Unfortunately, your timing wasn't perfect, but there you go.
That's okay. That's good. Then Ger O'Halloran has put a question about the insulation grants. It says the grant funds 80% of the cost of the insulation, but if you're looking at external insulation, the cost is 11 to 14,000 for a mid-terraced house, typical of Cabra, which still leaves prohibitively expensive, like 8,000 to 11,000. And is there anything proposed to address the gap? Ger, you've typed in, Ger Doherty.
Yeah, so I just talked through the answer. So yeah, the 80% towards the 80% grant only applies, to my knowledge, to ceiling insulation, to attic insulation, basically. Typically, the grants otherwise, in most cases, are around the 30%, maybe 30-35%. Now, there's some exceptions there, like with the one-stop shop. Some of them, like for instance, if you're getting the extra 2,000 for the heat pump, then that changes that formula a bit. But mainly the single grants are typically the 30 to 35%. As regards and it's only 80% for to my knowledge, the only one that 80% applies is the attic insulation. And the only thing that I'm aware of that's supposed to be changing, although this has been promised for a long time, is promoting low cost loans. Sorry, there's supposed to be low cost loans, loan packages, and finance from I don't know which of the European funds, but one of the European funds that's supposed to be provided to provide low interest loans. But they have been talking about that for a long time, and it always seems to be, the next quarter. To my knowledge, I'm not aware of anything else that's changing with regard to the grant amounts in percentage terms in the short term. Okay.
The next question, I think, well, actually, Ger, you've kind of answered it, but I might add on something. So this is any quotes, documentation from energy upgrade contractors outlining how much savings people can make if 5 or 10 or 15 people, group together, and that would really encourage people. So, Ger, go on.
Yeah, so I approached a solar PV supplier, and they said between 5 and 10% if they got 5 houses in the one estate.
Okay.
And that's as far as I've gone with it.
Yeah, and just on that, I know, like, I live in the Glen Bay area, if people are familiar with that, off Old Cabra Road. So at the moment, I think we've 4 people who are interested in getting solar PV. And we have, we've already got about 6 people in the estate who've got solar PV, and they've had a really good experience. So that's been helpful. So we're hoping we're going to have a kind of a call, on the Facebook page, or we'll do a Zoom call or something like that to see if we can get 7 or 8 people together and see if we can get a discount. And then it helps as well with getting the tenders and getting quotes from companies. At least you can share the work and share your experience, so it is valuable that way. Patricia, you just said, can we share the recording with the neighbours? Yes, you can. We'll email it out, and we'll also put it up on our YouTube channel. And the old webinars are there as well, and they are very, very useful. And the question, was it Roz had a question? Roz, yeah. So Roz is asking, if you live in a terrace with neighbouring houses owned by the council, are the council going to contact owner-occupier neighbours to try and include them if the council is performing energy upgrades? I don't know.
I have no idea on that. I don't suppose there's anybody from the council on the call, is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, yeah, I
Not
don't
that
see
I'm
any.
aware of.
I don't recognize any of the names.
Could I make a suggestion that we should formally ask the council that question? It's a very good question.
Yep, I'm happy with that. I've got the feeling the answer is that they're not doing it, and they should. But there you are. Oh yeah, sorry, Fergal, just some of the people who participated in the energy audits are wondering when the BER certs will be sent out to them, will they? Sorry,
yeah. So I don't know what happened. Like the guy, anyway, we needed the MPRNs, which is a number, it's a meter point reference number. So the BER assessor needs that to register and issue the certs. So there's a little bit of a miscommunication, I think, but yeah, it's being resolved, so they'll get them soon.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, so Patricia, as soon as possible, I think is the answer there. Okay, Deirdre,
sorry, Brian. Can you tell people to actually who haven't got a BER cert, maybe just to email hello at Connecting-Cabra as well?
Yeah. Okay.
So we have reference, because otherwise then we'll get, we'll actually just be able to organize who has and who hasn't. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Deirdre, you've got a couple of questions there. Do you just want to talk to them?
I had, yeah. So it was, I think they're mainly for Jared. It was just based on the couple of presentations there. So you might not know this off the top of your head, but how many houses in Cabra need to do upgrades in principle? Now that would be maybe looking at all the those bar charts, but you probably don't have that number in your head. But that might be.
I don't. But if you look at if the average BER for Cabra is E1,
right,
it suggests that there's a huge amount of houses which would benefit from the upgrades. I mean, Fergal, you might have a better idea from the ENP, but
yeah, I mean, I haven't taken that number out. But it's kind of like 70 or 80%, I would say, of the houses.
So that's a lot of houses. I'm thinking we could work. It's to, when people have, if you could say, I mean, we'll be able to work it out based on what you said, I suppose. But if you can say, like, there's 10,000 houses in Cabra that actually need upgrading, if kind of people can get a fix on how where we are. So the second question was, which really struck me about Owen's experience, a one-stop shop provider quoting 50% difference in heat pump. Is SEAI aware of that? I would be very concerned about that.
yeah. So
and can that be reported back, or how does this kind of, where's the monitoring of this kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, it can certainly be reported back. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a lot of, well, dare I say, I'm not saying that the particular house to home is doing this, but I mean, the price has certainly gone up, and you would question sometimes, are they gone up just because demand is so high that people I'm not saying this is house to home, but that people kind of say, oh, I'm up to my eyes. And if you know, I've so much work on that I'm only going to do that work if somebody desperately needs me and is willing to pay a very high price. That happens when there's obviously huge demand in the market and limited supply. So it could be that case. I am yeah, there's a technical term for it which Owen is using there, but like
screwed over is what the term I'd be using.
I got my house externally insulated, and I got windows done as well last year. What day year is this? 2023? Yeah, in 2022. And the one-stop shops were just coming online at the time, and I decided myself not to go with them, because I kind of had a contractor lined up. I kind of felt the prices were going up significantly and I'd already got a price from the contractor, and I was also aware that, you know, I don't know how many there. I think there's something like 10 or 12 one-stop shops now, and maybe that's easing some of the pressure on them. I don't know, but I know I was kind of hearing stories about people being given, you know, I'll talk to you in 3 months and 4 months and 5 months. So I got no grant for my windows, because I didn't go one-stop shop, and I got a grant of 6,000 for my external insulation, which is the standard, you know, one-off grant that you get. And I was extremely happy with the end result. So that worked well for me, but as I said, I didn't go the one-stop shop. I think the one-stop shop will work for a lot of people, because see, one of the reasons why I didn't go one-stop shop as well is because I can look at a contractor and know what he's doing and know if he's doing it right or wrong. But if you take, you know, somebody of somebody of my vintage, even that you know, isn't technically minded, you know, for them to manage the project and to know whether the guy is doing it right or wrong can be very challenging. And I think a lot of people, why they don't get their houses upgraded, I mean, one is the money, but the other is fear of not knowing what to do or who to ask. Like if I asked SCAI, well, you know, SCAI are trying to promote, you know, getting the job done. If I ask a contractor, you know, they're going to try and get me to get the job done. So everybody's trying to get me the job done, but is the job the right job? Do you know what I mean? And that's one of the things that I found, and it was really useful, Deirdre, the information session that you guys had, where people were hearing from their neighbors. So I found that where I live, is that people approach me now who would kind of vaguely recognize me from walking the dog or something like that. But now they talk to me because I got the job done, and they're asking me, how did it go? What was good? What was bad? Was your contractor good? What was the disturbance like? Did they make the mess of your house? Blah, 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 blah. And if you can hear that from a neighbor who you kind of trust, because there's no advantage to them telling you, you know, that it all went fine, I think that can cause a kind of a snowball effect. And hopefully it will.
That is called the standing ovation theory, believe it or not.
Right,
People
okay.
like to copy other people, and we like that. That's a thing. But I was just going to. So I was one more question before. How do you know? Like you were saying, like, okay, I'm not, you know, a bit of knowledge, but I couldn't tell you one bad job from a good job unless it was doing some damage to my house. So who do we go to find out?
Well, there are standards.
But if we don't know, if somebody's, you know, or
well, again, I mean, yeah, okay. So there are standards that they have to observe. There's a whole code of practice that the contractors have to observe. So and they have to follow the like, for instance, doing the external insulation. The NSAI have a standard where they actually specify, you know, exactly what has to be done. So I basically had that in my hand every day to check that that's what they were doing. And I mean, maybe, you know, for Connecting-Cabra on the website, that's the sort of thing that we could probably put up on the website that say, if you're getting a job done and if you feel reasonably technically competent, here's the standard, you know, that's supposed to be followed when they're putting in a heat pump or when they're putting in external insulation, and have a look at it. And just and even, to be honest with you, if you don't know what it says, but you're walking around the house while your man is doing the job with the NSAI for the heat pumps, that kind of has an effect or can have an effect, you know.
Oh, you mean the fact that you have it in your hand?
Yeah, the fact that you have the standard and your man says, oh, look at this fecker looking at this standard. That. Oh, geez, I better make sure that I've got 6, you know, fixings holding on that block of insulation as opposed to 2.
Very good. That's a nice
great idea.
So that's the sort of thing that we could share on you know, on Connecting-Cabra website.
We could have the actual guidelines. You're saying put a PDF up on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, and Great. I don't, is there more
Well,
there?
just to close off, if it's okay, just on some of the questions. So, Councillor Declan Mina is here, and sorry, I think from a Connecting-Cabra point of view, I think we have to say the support from local representatives and councillors has been great, and on all the kind of activities we've had. But Declan is here this evening, and he's just saying, and in response to Ross's question about, you know, if the council are doing work, will they consult with owner occupiers and maybe kind of partner with them? So he's saying, here is local councillor for the area. I suspect the answer to the question about joint projects with the council is that the council has a different funding scheme and we have to tender for it. But he's going to ask a question to the June council meeting and get back to us on that. So that's it. There was some feedback as well around finance. The credit union are doing green loans, and the green rates for green mortgages are around 3% if people are looking for low cost finance. It'd be nice if it was lower, but anyway. Okay, I'm going to pass back to Deirdre, and yep.
Okay, I think we managed the time well, which is surprising, and good. So we can all go off to the pub now and chat some more, or some of us anyway. So thanks to everyone for coming. I'm going to put share the last slide up on the screen so you can see our website details. But anyway, follow us on social media, and again, if there are any further questions, random or technical or any you know, wildcard questions, you can put them to us and we'll annoy Ger and Fergal again about it, if you don't mind, and the two techies in the room, Justin and Owen as well. Sorry guys. Okay, so I'll just share the last slide and